Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going, and as I like to remind you each and every day, it expands our base. For every action, there is a reaction. And now we are seeing action and reaction, and it's hitting us everywhere. Let's talk about mass layoffs. Donald Trump is proud of the fact that he is gutting the federal government, that he is laying off people in vital industries and vital work that is done by everyone from people working for NOAA to Social Security. Well, you name it. Donald Trump is simply blasting away along with Elon Musk. But there is a reaction, and that is the action of the courts. And that is the question that we want to deal with today. Can the courts put a check on what Donald Trump is doing? Let me be very clear. I believe that when you have a government based on a balance of power, legislative, executive, and judicial, that there have to be some restraints, some vehicles to contain one branch or the other that goes too far. And now we see every single day attacks on the system that we have grown to appreciate. Whether it is mass layoffs, gutting federal agencies, or invoking what I think is the most unbelievable thing of all, to revoke the 14th Amendment, not by a constitutional process, not by going state by state, not by proposing an amendment to the Constitution, which of course they wouldn't be able to achieve, but by executive order. It's astounding. And now using a 1789 law dealing with alien and sedition, and using that to deport people who are here in the United States legally, there is something really wrong. And I say this with absolute sincerity. Now, some of you listening to the sound of my voice support Donald Trump. So I want you to stop and I want you to think for a minute. What if Joe Biden has done this? What if Joe Biden had taken the actions that are now being taken by Donald Trump? What would your reaction be? And I can tell you it would be absolute fury. Because you would say that the chief executive is exercising powers that, frankly, are not good, not right, and that, in fact, what ought to happen is that the legislature ought to be involved. Now, here is the problem. Donald Trump has a very narrow majority in the Senate and in the House, and he knows that taking some of these things to Congress would create a problem. And besides, he believes in a concept called the unitary presidency. That is to say, that a president of the United States, using executive power and executive orders, can do what he wishes to do with virtually no restraint. This is all going to end up in the courts. And so I want to focus for a moment on the fact that the courts are going to play the critical role. Will layoffs be permitted? The courts will have to decide. Will the 14th Amendment be changed? That will have to be decided by the courts. And, of course, the question of expulsion of people from this country, that too will ultimately go to the courts. But here's the kicker. In the end, the only court that will matter will be the Supreme Court. And the question is, does Donald Trump have the votes on the Supreme Court to uphold actions which I believe are patently unconstitutional? This is going to be a challenge for some of the so-called conservative jurists. If they are strict constructionists, if they are literalists, if they believe that the President of the United States can be limited, then he's in big trouble. But I have a feeling that these discussions on the court will be decided by a narrow majority. This is not like the days when Franklin Roosevelt suggested a packing of the court, That was in 1937. No, this is not 1937. It is 2025. Nor is it like the United States versus Richard Nixon, where the court took a firm stand on the limits of executive privilege and executive power. We are now dealing with a court in 2025. And so, my friends, we have a constitutional crisis because these actions that Donald Trump has taken and continues to take every single day will ultimately be decided by 9 individuals on the United States Supreme Court. Will they put ideology first, or will they put the Constitution first? That's the question. And I ask it, and I present it to you because I believe strongly, very strongly, that that's what it's going to come down to. Between now and the midterm elections, when the American people will have a chance to speak out, what's going to matter is what the courts do or what they don't do. This, I suggest to you, lays the foundation for a constitutional crisis if the court declines to intervene, declines to stand up to what Donald Trump is doing. My friends, we are on the verge of a major issue in this country, and it can only be resolved by law. Now, I must tell you that there are some who suggest that I put too much faith in the Constitution, too much faith in the justices of the Supreme Court, too much faith in the law. I have a simple question. What is our alternative? There will not be an election for the Congress until 2026. There will not be a race for president until 2028. And that means that our limits have been met. Every day, we find Donald Trump assaulting the rule of law. At least that is my perception. And now there is only one place to go, and that is to the courts. And the lower courts will make their judgments. Ultimately, they will be appealed all the way to the United States Supreme Court. But let me sum it up this way. If the courts don't do the right thing, we are courting disaster. Yeah, that was the pun. If the courts don't do the right thing, we will be courting disaster for democracy. And so we wait. Each day there are new court decisions for those whose jobs are in jeopardy, for those who face real problems because they won't be able to pay their bills, for those who put their faith in Donald Trump. This is the ultimate test. No matter which side of the aisle you decide to support, in the end, it is the courts of the United States which will make the decision. We are a nation of law. Let us hope that the law is upheld. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. Make sure to follow along. Let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague. Of course, you can interact with me, as you do, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and of course by emailing me directly. I want to say a special word of thanks to Gogo Zuger, the wonderful producer of Around the Political World with John Rothman. We have a long weekend ahead, and no doubt, on Monday, when I return, Donald Trump will provide us with even more to discuss. In the meantime, let's hope we are not courting disaster.